good day, one and all, friends and foes. You know who you are. I'm Cal, and you're listening to Missing Links Movie Podcast, your weekly reel of the latest in film news. We are going to spend a bit of time today going over our top billed articles, new trailers, release dates, and what's opening in theaters this week. So, whether you're a fan of What We Do in the Shadows, Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Out of the Shadows, Dark Shadows, this is the podcast for you. The pod's currently on Spotify and YouTube on the channel Missing Link Movies. And because we didn't have an episode last week because of Thanksgiving, I'm trying to cover for 2 weeks here. If I had done an episode each week, I'd probably cover more stories in each. But because I'm trying to condense 2 weeks into one episode, I just tried to pick the bigger stories that we're going to talk about. So without further ado, let's introduce our top billed stories this week. First off, as usual, the box office weekend. So the way this works is because of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is often calculated as a 5-day weekend that starts on, Wednesday, which in this case, this year is the 22nd, and goes through Sunday, because normally it's calculated Friday to Sunday, with Friday being the last work day of the week. With Thanksgiving, it's Wednesday. So we calculate from Wednesday to Sunday. With that in mind, here are the top 10 movies that we had for the long weekend. Number 1 was The Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes at $42 million. It didn't debut this week, but it maintained its number 1 spot. Number 2 is Napoleon. That's Ridley Scott's new movie about Napoleon, the French guy, that debuted at $32 million. I don't know if it was expected to debut at number 1. I mean, it is a 2.5-3 hour historical epic. And I also believe it's an Apple TV film. And so I imagine it'll come to Apple TV Plus relatively soon. And then at number 3, very shocking, is Disney's Wish, their new animated movie Wish, debuting at number 3 with $31 million. Which, is getting to be just a repeated refrain from this year, but it's just yet another Disney bomb. It's estimated that Wish had a budget of something like $200 million. And so with a domestic debut of $31 million, it is not projected to have very good legs throughout the rest of its run. It is not going to do well. And we're going to talk more about that later in our grab bag section. But it's really crazy, really crazy. This was Disney's last chance to, it's their last big release of the year. And with this, and the way it's looking, it will end up being that Disney will not have a single film hitting $1 billion this year, which is the first time in several years. It's been quite a while since Disney has not had at least $1 billion grossing film. And this year is changing that. I'd actually have to look it up, because I'm curious if even 2020, if they would have had any $1 billion movies, because that was during the pandemic. But accepting that, it's rather crazy, especially considering, there were multiple Marvel movies, a big budget animated movie, an Indiana Jones movie, no Star Wars movie, but they had a lot of opportunities. They had the closest they got was with Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I think that made $700 million, somewhere between 700 and 800 million. So they got close, but it's a very unlucky and very ironic that it's Disney's big 100th anniversary celebration as a company, and they're having such a terrible year. But we'll talk more about that later. Number 4, Trolls Band Together. This opened the weekend previously. Number 5, Thanksgiving. That's the horror slasher movie from Eli Roth. Number 6, The Marvels. Yikes. only 9 million. So the Marvels is, terribly underperforming. Number 7 is The Holdovers. Number 8, Saltburn. I didn't realize that was out. That must have opened the weekend before Thanksgiving. Number 9, Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour. And number 10, Next Goal Wins. That's Taika Waititi's new movie. So yeah, we're going to see for the rest of the year, I think the next big release will probably be Wonka. I imagine that'll open at number 1. I think the Hunger Games will have, settled down. But unless if Wish had gotten really good reviews and with really good word of mouth, it might, maintain its place at the top, but it hasn't been getting good reviews. People aren't too excited to see it. I think it's just going to keep dropping from where it's at number 3. So moving on to our headlines. First is from a couple weeks ago now, but this comes from Variety's Angelique Jackson. New Jason Bourne movie in the works at Universal. Universal is in early development on a new movie about super spy Jason Bourne, with All Quiet on the Western Front filmmaker Edward Berger in talks to direct. The new movie would be the latest installment of the blockbuster franchise, which has tallied 5 films, 4 of which starred Matt Damon, and more than $1.6 billion at the box office. Sources familiar with the project have stressed that it's still in early development, so any grand return to the world of Jason Bourne may be far into the future. There's currently no script in the works, nor is there a writer attached, so it's unclear if the plan is to bring back original cast members or entirely reboot the property. So it's too soon to say if cast members like Damon would return. The same is true about Jeremy Renner, who played Black Ops agent Aaron Cross in 2012's The Bourne Legacy, though the involvement of the former might be more likely. Most recently, Berger directed the World War I epic All Quiet on the Western Front, which won 4 Oscars, including the trophy for Best International Feature Film. Earlier this month, his upcoming thriller Conclave, starring Ralph Fiennes and John Lithgow, was acquired for U.S. distribution by Focus Features. Universal had no comment. So if you're a Jason Bourne fan, this should be something to look forward to. Edward Mr. Berger is a talented filmmaker with All Quiet on the Western Front. I did see that. I haven't seen any Jason Bourne besides the first one. I've seen parts of The Bourne Legacy, but very cool. That's something to kind of put on the back burner, not to get too excited about it yet. It's very possible that Edward Berger departs the project because they don't even have a writer yet. No script is being worked on. It's just a thing. So very tentative, in my opinion. We might see it, we might not. Next headline, Superman Legacy. Comes from Deadline's Justin Kroll and Anthony D'Alessandro. Nicholas Hoult lands the role of Lex Luthor. James Gunn has found his Lex Luthor in British actor Nicholas Hoult, several sources tell us. The studio wanted to go through the Lex Luthor casting process after the SAG-AFTRA strike. Warner's already is in business with Hoult on Clint Eastwood's Juror No. 2, and he also starred in the 2015 Warner Bros. Blockbuster Mad Max Fury Road, which made over $380 million at the global box office and won 6 Oscars. Deadline reported last week that Venezuelan actress Maria Gabriela de Furia landed the role of villain the Engineer. Holt follows in the line of such actors as Gene Hackman, Kevin Spacey, and Jesse Eisenberg, who have portrayed Luthor on screen. I actually believe technically, if Aurora Comics, a DC Comics super fan, I think it's pronounced Luthor, Lex Luthor, Luthor. Anyways, on screen in the Warner Bros. Superman franchise. Yeah, so, and then it just goes through the leads for the other roles in the movie. James Gunn. Superman Legacy has been set for a worldwide release on July 11th, 2025. So this will be the first kind of it's the front and center of their new DC universe that they're creating. And Nicholas Hoult is a very cool choice for Lex Luthor. If you're unfamiliar, he played, as well as being in Mad Max Fury Road, he played J.R.R. Tolkien in the movie, I think it was called Tolkien. He was Beast, Hank McCoy, in the newer X-Men films, X-Men First Class, X-Men Apocalypse, X-Men Days of Future Past. The Menu. He was in The Menu, one of the leads in that, and he was awesome in that. I've never seen him play something that Lex Luthor would be. I mean, he played kind of a crazed villain in Mad Max, but Lex Luthor isn't crazed. He's very, methodical, very threatening, but not in a necessarily physical way, but just in a very intelligent way. So, I mean, yeah, it's not quite as out there as Jesse Eisenberg, but Jesse Eisenberg brought a whole different dimension to that character, being like a fidgety tech bro. But so I'm curious to see what direction they'll take it with Nicholas Hoult. But cool. Our next headline comes from Variety's Ethan Schanfeld. New Karate Kid movie to unite Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio. Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio, who starred in separate Karate Kid films decades apart, will unite for a brand new movie set in the martial arts franchise. The movie, from Sony Pictures, director Jonathan Entwistle and writer Rob Lieber, will premiere in theaters on December 13th, 2024. Karen Rosenfeld is producing. So just real quick, I'm surprised the release date is that soon. I mean, for the movie to be announced now and coming out a little over a year later, that's kind of surprising. I mean, it's not a huge CGI Marvel or superhero blockbuster, but it's a pretty quick turnaround. So pretty cool. Back to the article. Plot details are kept under wraps on the new movie, but Macchio will reprise his role as Daniel LaRusso, who he played in the original Karate Kid film trilogy starting in 1984 and brought back on Netflix's Cobra Kai series. Chan will return to the role of Mr. Han, a kung fu master based on Mr. Miyagi, who coached Jaden Smith's Dre Parker in the 2010 remake movie. It's unclear how the sprawling story of Cobra Kai will factor into the new Karate Kid movie. Making the announcement in a video posted on YouTube, Chan and Macchio launched a global casting search for a brand new Karate Kid to lead the movie, inviting young actors to submit audition tapes to KarateKidCasting.com. Since 1984, the Karate Kid franchise has become one of Hollywood's most beloved sports sagas, spawning the Emmy-nominated Cobra Kai series and earning more than $430 million at the global box office. Two things that are, really shocking about this. One, that Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan, who, were in completely unconnected, I don't know if they were completely unconnected, but very disconnected Karate Kid movies. Jackie Chan in the reboot, Ralph Macchio in the original, are going to be in the same Karate Kid movie. Now, admittedly, I didn't watch the Karate Kid movie with Jackie Chan and Jaden Smith, but I thought Jackie Chan was playing a rebooted version of Mr. Miyagi, who was played by Pat Morita in the original trilogy. So the fact that he actually plays a character named Mr. Han makes a lot more sense to me, because I thought like the Karate Kid reboot was a reboot. It was same characters, same universe, or sorry, not the same universe, just a retelling of the story with new actors, but pretty much the same characters. So that kind of does away with one of my questions with how they were going to merge these supposedly two different Karate Kid universes into one. But it sounds like Jackie Chan was never playing not Pat Morita. He was never playing Mr. Miyagi in the first place. That could be cool. I've heard Cobra Kai is really good. I don't know anything that the director Jonathan Entwistle or writer Rob Lieber have done. And the other really interesting thing, I think, is that it's an open casting call. You don't see that super often, especially for movies like this that are part of a franchise that are so beloved. It's really cool. And there's another article that comes from The Hollywood Reporter's Ryan Gajewski that after just within the first day or two of the open casting call, they received over 10,000 submissions for the lead role. So that is insane and really cool. I wonder how they're going to sort through all those. According to the website for the casting call, the team is looking for someone to portray Chinese or mixed race Chinese in the age range of 15 to 17 years old. Interesting. So Ralph Macchio, white, I believe. I don't want to assume. But Jaden Smith, African American. So they want to go with someone who's Chinese or mixed race Chinese. Interesting. Cool. Very nice. And let's see. We will look forward to that with bated breath. All right. Next headline comes from Variety's Jordan Moreau. Dave Filoni is Chief Creative Officer at Lucasfilm, will be planning the future of Star Wars films and shows. Dave Filoni, who has overseen Star Wars The Clone Wars, Rebels, The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and is the master of all things in a galaxy far, far away, now has a new role at Lucasfilm. Has a new role as Lucasfilm Chief Creative Officer. He still holds the title of Executive Vice President, which he received in 2020. Filoni announced his Chief Creative Officer title in an interview with Vanity Fair on Tuesday. He was already an executive producer on all live-action Star Wars shows on Disney Plus and had been tapped to direct a film, weaving together all of the TV storylines. But he will now take a more involved role with the future of Star Wars. In the past, quote, in the past, in a lot of projects I would be brought into it. I would see it after it had already developed in good ways, he said. In this new role, it's opened up to basically everything that's going on. When we're planning the future of what we're doing now, I'm involved at the inception phase. I'm not telling people what to do, he added, but I do feel I'm trying to help them tell the best story that they want to tell. I need to be a help across the galaxy here, like a part of the Jedi Council almost. Star Wars is slowly planning a grand return to the big screen. The franchise has several more TV series in the works too. Up next is Skeleton Crew, a coming-of-age story created by John Watts and Christopher Ford. The Acolyte, a thriller helmed by Leslie Headland set in the distant past, and Season 2 of Tony Gilroy's Andor. On the big screen, there are films in the works by James Mangold, Taika Waititi, Sean Levy, and Charmin Obaid-Chinoy. Filoni is also exploring a possible second season of Ahsoka, which starred Rosario Dawson as the live-action grown-up version of Jedi Ahsoka Tano. Filoni has been with the Star Wars universe since directing the Clone Wars movie in 2008. No, this is the animated Clone Wars movie, not Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. I would have confused that, so just for anyone else who's not as familiar with the Star Wars universe. It was an animated movie in 2008 and has worked closely with creator George Lucas for years. Kathleen Kennedy will still serve as president of Lucasfilm and Carrie Beck as head of development. Filoni weighs in on a narrative level while Kennedy oversees Lucasfilm and Beck brings other filmmakers to the fold. This is a very interesting business move because Dave Filoni has, like the article says, has long been involved with Star Wars projects. I know a lot of Star Wars fans have really enjoyed the things he's had a hand in, the Clone Wars, Rebels, Mandalorian, and all that. So, and because he's doing it at more of a narrative level than a business level, it could be interesting because he's not without his flaws. I mean, the Clone Wars animated series has a lot of filler. There's really great episodes. There's also really, very bad episodes. The first season of Mandalorian was great. Second season was pretty good. Third season was not very well received. Book of Boba Fett was not very well received. Ahsoka, it did all right. But people love the characters that he's created. And he loves them too, which is why he continues to bring them and connect them and continually reuse them. I'm interested to see if that means that the movies and shows we're going to see are going to continue to focus around the characters he's created, or if we're going to be able to get a little bit of diversity in the characters and things we're exploring. In one sense, it's nice because, almost everything previously was focused around the Skywalkers and the characters related to the original trilogy. So it's nice that we have a new group of characters that we're getting stuff about. But I'm curious if Dave Filoni will want everything to involve those, or if he'll allow opportunities to explore other areas and things of the Star Wars franchise. Regarding Kathleen Kennedy, I don't know. I don't think it would be the right move to replace Kathleen Kennedy with Dave Filoni, because I don't think Dave Filoni necessarily has a business, like a producing background per se. He definitely seems like a storyteller. I think that's where he and us would want him to stick, as being able to be involved with the story more. But Kathleen Kennedy just, Lucasfilm has had a lot of flops. The Willow, recently the Willow Disney Plus series received horribly. The last couple of Star Wars movies, not taken very well. Indiana Jones, one of the bombs this year. Disney is going through... Kathleen Kennedy isn't the sole reason Disney is failing, obviously. She's not the sole reason Lucasfilm is failing. But when there's a pattern of underperformances, you have to wonder what is going on. Like, I suppose that rather than replace her, they just want to bring someone else to take more of the lead on narrative stuff. Because I mean, ironically, I don't think Kathleen Kennedy had much involvement with things story-wise. I mean, she was the one responsible for greenlighting things, but not necessarily making sure what narrative thread each project was following. I mean, because we got freaking the amazing Andor series, which I loved and I think is one of the best Star Wars themes since the original trilogy. I think it's even better than a couple of the original trilogy movies. Just incredible. So it's not like she's personally crafting the narrative for all these things, but it does seem that she could be picking the wrong people, picking the wrong writers, approving the wrong projects. It's hard to say, but Kathleen Kennedy, in addition to the leaders of Walt Disney Animation Studios, even all the way up to Bob Iger himself, it's like, I think Disney just needs some major retooling in the leadership. Kevin Feige in Marvel. I mean, things worked well for them with the way they are for a long time. But I think that time is just kind of running out, and there needs to be a changing of the guard. There needs to be some new blood, or there needs to be some changes. And again, we'll talk about that in the grab bag section. But this is a pretty big shakeup for not a shakeup per se, but a pretty huge addition to the top brass at Disney and Lucasfilm specifically. So our last top headline is a bit of a smaller one, but comes from Deadline's Matt Grobar. The Apprentice, Jeremy Strong and Maria Bakalova join Sebastian Stan in Donald Trump pick. Here's one you probably didn't see coming. Sebastian Stan, the Emmy and Golden Globe nominee, known for his work in the MCU and the acclaimed Hulu miniseries Pam and Tommy, has been tapped for the role of a young Donald Trump in The Apprentice, a new film from Cannes Prize-winning Iranian filmmaker Ali Abbasi. Also aboard the film in major roles are Emmy and Golden Globe winner Jeremy Strong and Oscar nominee Maria Bakalova. Production commenced this week. Billed as an exploration of power and ambition set in a world of corruption and deceit, The Apprentice will examine Trump's efforts to build his real estate business in New York in the 70s and 80s, also digging into his relationship with infamous attorney Roy Cohn. It's a mentor-protege story that charts the origins of a major American dynasty filled with larger-than-life characters. It reveals the moral and human cost of a culture defined by winners and losers. Sources tell Deadline that Strong will play Cohn, with Bakalova as Trump's first wife, Ivana. News of the project comes as the former POTUS stands trial in New York for fraud, although currently under multiple indictments in multiple cases. The twice impeached Trump's eyeing a return to the Oval Office as the current Republican frontrunner for 2024. Blah, 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 blah. The writer for the Apprentice pick is Gabriel Sherman, whose bestseller The Loudest Voice in the Room inspired Showtime's miniseries The Loudest Voice, starring Russell Crowe as Fox News founder Roger Ailes. Producers are Daniel Beckerman of Scythia Films, Jared Jarek of Profile Pictures, and Ruth Tracy of Tailored Films. Executive producers are Grant S. Johnson, Gabriel Sherman, and Amy Baer, in association with Kinematics as the financier, Mark Rappaport, founder/CEO, and Emmanuel Nunez as president. Okay, I don't have too much to say about this one. It's just interesting, I think, to have a Donald Trump movie in production at this current point and not have it be about his presidency. I think it's too soon for, a movie about his presidency, I suppose. But, it's more about his past, 70s, 80s kind of a thing. And similar to the Elon Musk biopic that was announced a few weeks ago coming from, was it Aaron Sorkin? Gosh, I'm having trouble remembering, but I just kind of have a similar question of like, is this going to be the kind of film that takes the perspective of like, what a visionary but flawed man? Or is it going to be like a very satirical kind of atmosphere or tone, theme, whatever? I'm curious, so that's kind of all I have to say about that one. Just kind of interesting. That's a wrap on our top stories. So let's fly in the grab bag section where we're going to talk about Disney a bit. Because their last two projects in the last couple of months, The Marvels and Wish, are yet again just huge bombs for Disney. And so over the last few days, with a town hall and some other things, Bob Iger's been saying things. That's what we're going to call this grab bag section. Bob Iger is saying things. So there's a couple different points I'm going to go over that kind of talking about what's been going on over at the House of Mouse, as they say. The first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to start specifically with what he said about the Marvels. This comes from Variety, Zach Sharf. Bob Iger says that the Marvels was, quote, "The Marvels was shot during COVID," Iger explained. "There wasn't as much supervision on the set, so to speak, where we have executives that are really looking over what's being done day after day after day. I'm not sure another studio will ever achieve some of the numbers that we achieved," Iger said at the press conference. "I mean, we got to the point where if a film didn't do $1 billion in global box office, we were disappointed. That's an unbelievably high standard, and I think we have to get more realistic." Speaking more broadly about Disney's output, Iger added, "I don't want to apologize for making sequels. Some of them have done extraordinarily well, and they've been good films too. I think there has to be a reason to make them. You have to have a good story, and often the story doesn't hold up to, wow, what is this? And often the story doesn't hold up to, is not as strong as the original story. That can be a problem. It doesn't mean we're not going to continue to make them," Iger added. "We're making a number of them right now, as a matter of fact, but we only greenlight a sequel if we believe the story that the creators want to tell is worth telling. Which is why I'm sure they're working on Frozen 3 and 4 and Toy Story 5. So, yeah, a couple points. So he doesn't believe there is enough supervision on the Marvel set, which, gosh, if you'd asked me before today, I would say that's the problem with all these Disney movies, is just way too much executive supervision. Just like very rote, very no flair, it feels. They don't push the individuality of each project far enough. It's just kind of, they all are shot and written and marketed in just very similar ways. It's like, this is, Disney blockbuster number whatever. I would say that I think the only executive who maybe could have done well to be on the Marvels more day to day is Kevin Feige, because I still think Kevin Feige can be a very excellent storyteller and a very capable producer. I think he's just stretched too thin with all the different MCU projects going on. So I don't imagine he was super involved with the Marvels on a day-to-day basis. A couple years ago, he was promoted to, I think, Chief Creative Officer, not just for Marvel Studios, but for Marvel, covering comics, TV, film, video games. And so I imagine the role that all the tasks and responsibilities he has in that role just stretch him way too thin. I think they need to refocus his efforts on the MCU where he's most needed, to be quite honest. So that's one thing Bob Iger says. Another thing comes from CNBC's Alex Sherman. Disney CEO Bob Iger says companies' movies have been too focused on messaging. Quote, creators lost sight of what their number one objective needed to be, Iger said at the DealBook Summit in New York on Wednesday. We have to entertain first. It's not about messages. We have entertained with values and having a positive impact on the world in many different ways. Black Panther is a great example of that, Iger said. I like being able to entertain if you can infuse it with positive messages and have a good impact on the world. Fantastic. But that should not be the objective. When I came back, what I have really tried to do is return to our roots. So what I hate about the wording of this is, people are going to run with it and be like, oh, finally, Disney admits it. They went woke and now they're broke. That is not, I don't think, the message necessarily that Bob Iger is talking about. Because in reality, the kinds of this quote unquote message, that the go woke, go broke people are trying to push or are trying to push against is not really that prevalent in Disney movies, nor is it a guaranteed failure if a Disney tries to include it. I'm talking about culture wars stuff, LGBTQ themes, anti-toxic masculinity, anything of that nature, gets pushed against real hard. But like Disney movies, honestly, don't stray into the culture war stuff. Most of the involvement that Disney has in that stuff has been outside the movies, And so I just I don't think that's the messaging that Bob Iger is saying they're too focused on. I think it's I think there's just so many more elements to it. And I even if Bob Iger does mean the culture war stuff as the messaging he's talking about, I don't think it's necessarily the messaging that Disney is having a problem with. I would say that Disney is also having a messaging problem with the necessity of seeing their movies in theaters. Theaters are more expensive than ever. Tickets are crazy with inflation, cost of living in general. People really need to be motivated to go see something in the theaters. And a lot of the focus on Disney's messaging over the last couple of years is that Disney Plus is the home for Disney movies. And after putting Pixar's, a few of Pixar's movies, Luca, Turning Red, Soul, straight to Disney Plus before going to theaters, putting even their theatrically released movies on Disney Plus really soon, they've sent the message to audiences that they can just wait for Disney Plus. That if they just wait a month or two, they'll be able to watch whatever movie in their home on Disney Plus instead of in theaters. And the reviews for the movies they've been coming out with have not been helping. I mean, no one wants to see a poorly reviewed movie in theaters, with how expensive it can be. So they do need to focus on making better movies, for sure. And they need to focus on the quality rather than the quantity. So, and there's just, so it's just like, it's ridiculous that, that the only message that, the message that Disney is having a problem with is like going woke or whatever. Because we had Mario, the Super Mario Bros. Animated movie, which, subverted the trope of the Mario video game franchise where Peach is normally a damsel in distress who needs to be rescued. In the movie, she was more, to be honest, like kind of more capable than Mario, a very like capable and active participant in the plot. If it was a Marvel movie, it would have been called woke. It did over $1 billion. It did just fine. The Barbie movie being, with Barbie, the main character, being much more well-rounded and, capable and just like more, almost seen as the more well-rounded character than like Ken, for example, played by Ryan Gosling. It's like that easily. You had like Ben Shapiro's review, like saying it was trash and stuff. So that one was considered like one of those woke movies or whatever. It did fine. It did over $1 billion. It's the top grossing movie of the year right now. So Disney's movies do not have a problem with being woke, especially because most of the woke stuff that they have, whatever that means, is normally very small, tiny things, that are easily cut out or removed or like glossed over. I mean, you had people saying the Lightyear movie, went woke because there was an on-screen kiss between two female characters. I mean, it was a one shot, 5 seconds, and you're telling me that ruined the chances of the whole movie? No, it's because the movie itself was bad. The movie itself, the plot was like not conducive to a necessarily family friendly. It was definitely it was not what they marketed it as. They marketed it as the movie that Andy would have seen in theaters when he was a kid in the Toy Story universe. It definitely was not that. It was way too cerebral for a typical kids movie, especially from the 90s. It did not necessarily portray Buzz as like a super valiant, nearly flawless hero. So it's just like Disney has a lot of problems with the messages that they push, for sure, but it's not the woke messages. It's I do think many of their movies, rather than having a message for families, it's more of a message for young adults and millennials. And part of that is because of the people they have in charge, directing, writing, approving these movies. You had movies like Encanto. Encanto wasn't woke at all, but that still didn't necessarily perform very well. It was well received. The songs were very, I didn't like Encanto that much. But I have an unpopular opinion on that. The songs were very well regarded. But movies like Turning Red, Encanto, just like dealing with generational conflict, Strange World from last year, dealing with generational conflict, very heavy themes that I don't think kids necessarily relate to. And so that's what I think, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. That's the message I think Disney is being too concerned with, is the messages that they're including in their movies aren't necessarily not for families. They're just not as universally appealing or relatable as in their past. I do believe movies with those kinds of themes are important and are great and can be great. But if they want to have those, the movies need to have smaller budgets. Their expectations need to be more in check. They don't necessarily, they need to be better marketed, and they need to at least have some of their movies returning to just like that all ages, general audience pleasing sort of thing. And and I guess was hoping that would be Wish, considering that was a return to the Disney princess kind of brand. But with that failure, I imagine, Wish is a whole other topic. Wish is a whole, it's relevant, but for Wish to be failing this bad, it's hard for me to know right now. I haven't seen it yet, so I can't say for sure what the problem with it is. But I think the reason it's flopping is because people have just gotten used to waiting for it to come to Disney Plus. It didn't necessarily look like a run out to sea. It wasn't received super well, and I guess that does make a difference in box office. With Mario was kind of resistant to it, but that's because Mario is a huge, historical not historical necessarily, but a very well beloved property. Wish is a brand new IP. So, but what the review's saying, that it was just kind of lazy, very rote, kind of generic, trying to pull in different pieces of Disney lore and legacy, but not implementing them very well. Not very interesting villain. An art style that fell kind of flat. There's a lot of problems with it, but lastly, which is the last thing that Bob Iger is saying, comes from Variety's Todd Spangler. Quote, "I was disappointed in what I was seeing in the transition period and while I was out," he said, per the Times, talking about the transition to Bob Chapek. "I worked hard at distancing myself from it." So this is, so Iger saying that, he was disappointed with what he was seeing with Bob Chapek at the reins, which is why he came back only after like a year and a half. I don't have as long of a tangent about this, but it's funny because I think a lot of the things that we're seeing, because Bob Chapek was in office for such a short time, I think a lot of the things we're seeing come out this year, a lot of the bombs, were things that would have been greenlit or given the go-ahead during Bob Iger. But that's not to say that greenlighting a project guarantees the quality or success. Bob Chapek was, ultimately responsible while these things were being made. But the final product of these things are all coming out after Bob Iger took the reins back. And they're still just failures. So we're going to need, so it's like, I guess they did try some new blood in the CEO chair, but that didn't work out so well. So the old man, when Bob Iger first retired, like, I would have said he was one of the best CEOs Disney ever had, with just in terms of business success, not necessarily in terms of like best creative eras of Disney, but just in terms of business success. During his tenure, they acquired Lucasfilm, they acquired Marvel Studios, they acquired 20th Century Fox, just like an insane list of accomplishments. But since coming back, I mean, he has just been like tarnishing that legacy, with his comments on the strikes about, actors being unreasonable, and with just being in charge during Disney's 100th anniversary or whatever, and just having all these failures, bomb after bomb after bomb. He's going to do some serious like turning around of the company, to kind of get back that reputation that he had when he left. Just like a crazy sort of downfall story. I mean, Disney is still not even close to like going bankrupt or anything. They still have had hugely successful movies as recently just the last couple of years. They have movies that I'm sure will be very successful coming up. The Frozen movies, we'll have to see. Things have changed now. It could be that Frozen 3 doesn't do as well because people just wait for it to go to Disney Plus. So we will have to see. But Bob Iger has some serious work to do to turn things around. But so that's our grab bag section. New trailers and release dates. Just kind of real quick. For the last couple of weeks, we had Madam Web. That's the new Sony Spider-Man adjacent movie coming out February 14th, 2024. Looks really bad. The Garfield animated movie starring Chris Pratt. The voice is really bad. That's coming May 24th, 2024. Which, coming out that same day, May 24th, Mad Max Furiosa. That trailer just came out yesterday. That premiered at, I believe, was it Cannes or TIFF? One of those. So that's already been seen. But it's coming out wide release May 24th, and then an Inside Out 2 teaser trailer coming for June 14th. Opening this weekend, we have a couple of good ones. We have Godzilla Minus One. That's the new Japanese Godzilla movie. We have The Shift with Neil McDonough. Oh, okay. Silent Night. That's the John Woo, I believe, directed. Yeah, John Woo with Joel Kinnaman. That's a Christmas film. Concert film. We have a Renaissance, a film by Beyonce. Teddy's Christmas, which has a release date of 2022, so that must be a re-release. Holiday Twist. Animal Crossing Christmas Festival, the movie. What is this? This isn't a... Surely this isn't being released in theaters. This looks like a fan-made... Yeah, no. Forget that. Yeah. I'm not sure about the rest of these. Yeah, it doesn't sound right. Yeah. Weird. Sometimes the movies they include on these lists are just like, where is that being released? Like, anyways. So, as we close out, thank you for watching or listening, because I don't have a setup for camera yet. Remember to come back next week. Tell your friends, family, whoever else who love movies about the podcast. That's pretty much it. I'm always never sure how to close these things. Should write a script. But as we go out, feel free to go to the YouTube. Leave some comments about what you've been seeing or what you're looking forward to. What do you think the problem with Disney is? I mean, if you do think it's because they're going woke, then I guess, but like, just know that there's plenty of other woke movies that are doing just fine. But that's neither here nor there. Thank you for listening. We'll return you now to your regularly scheduled life. Bye-bye.